So this is the last session of the day. And it's the last thing between you and the champagne on the boat and the party on the island, and then I'm not sure what's going to happen, or if we will remember tomorrow. We've talked about a lot of the interesting things happening in so many fields, from energy to IoT to data to legal implication to health to body hacking. Now, this is all good, but how do we make money from investment in this changing world? And so the last session is going to be our investment panel. So without further ado, I give you the podium.
So there's 4 chairs and 2 of us. That means you get to choose. Which chair would you like?
Okay, maybe over here.
You'll take that one. Do you see he wanted to take the yellow one and realized that that's probably the one for me. Thank you. Hi, my name is Aurore Belfrage.
Looks more comfortable.
As the investor...
Yeah, ladies first.
Ladies first, thank you. I appreciate it. So, as I was saying, I am an entrepreneur.
Just like me.
Just like you. And I have now moved VC side.
Just like me.
Just like you. We have 2 secret panelists, so if anyone would like to jump up last minute and join us for this discussion on one of my favorite topics, which is the changing nature of the investment community and how venture capital is evolving, but also how corporates are moving into the space, which I think is interesting. Just to give you a brief background, I've co-founded and founded a few different businesses, which means I have failed multiple times, which I think most entrepreneurs know how that feels. And the investors are very important. The business that I founded that's the most well-known is a startup called Wrapp. We founded it in Stockholm and then moved it to Silicon Valley and then back again to Stockholm. Raised $26 million and put together a fantastic board of Nicholas Sennström, the founder of Skype, which was an early investor, and Mr. Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn. So super geeks that we were very proud of. But the key combinator there is entrepreneurs that have gone VC side, which was hugely important for us in developments, and been a lot of learnings in that. So that was my story briefly. Please, let's invite the panelists. Please tell us your story, going from entrepreneur to VC.
Yep.
And as we were talking about in the break, your key points right now where you see that the market is evolving from an investor's perspective.
Yeah. Well, as I told you in the break, the less people in the panel, the more time for us. So
yes.
It's a short panel anyway. So my short story.
Then ask a lot of stupid questions.
Please do.
Brilliant.
Please do.
For the other 2.
We're looking for those.
Stupid questions. That means you could be an investor as well, right?
Absolutely.
They do that, right? So I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I started some 22 years ago. I always developed businesses in the region. I'm based in Bucharest, Romania, but I've done business in some 7-8 countries in the region, particularly southeastern Europe, but also some other countries more to the north and Central Europe. And I have done a number of sequential exits as an entrepreneur, so I'm a serial entrepreneur. And then I started to invest as a business angel, primarily in the IT and tech sector. And finally, I've turned to the dark side, is joining the VC community.
I feel this is like a confession booth.
No, I think, all kidding aside, I think a lot of my prior experience as an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur and business angel, prepared me for joining the VC community, because one needs a lot of practical experience in terms of founding and developing businesses to be able to then assess those businesses and help those businesses to grow. And as you mentioned very well, some of your best investors were actually former entrepreneurs turned private equity people or other types of investors. And obviously, if you look at the VC world, you still have the 2 sides of it, which is on one side you have the people with a lot of structured knowledge about investment financing.
We are being joined fashionably late.
Investment bank.
Let's give them a round of applause. Welcome.
Sorry for barging in. But
Well, I assume you were doing important business and a deal was struck on the other side of the door,
We were
and
just
we will
outside.
forgive you.
So I was saying that there are two sides. One is more like investment bankers, financial consultants, and the other one is people with actual entrepreneurial experience. And I think a mix of the two worlds is actually very beneficial for the investee companies, because if you have a team that combines the two sets of expertises, then you have a very good prerequisite for success in investing in various companies.
Couldn't agree more. Just to fill you guys in where we are, we've been talking a little about the changing community of VCs and the importance of capital when you're starting a business. And what we've been alluding to is both entrepreneurs ourselves, the importance of understanding the business and having done that, and as I usually say, been in the trenches, cried a little and understood what that means. So let's continue the round of introductions and maybe get your feel for where you think that the main changes have happened in Europe over the last 12 months.
sure, I'm Yavuz, Kaynar. I'm with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, shortly EBRD. We have a venture fund within the bank that we use in our countries of operation, which include obviously Turkey, but all the Eastern European countries and Jordan, Tunisia, all the sort of the CMET countries that we call. So we look for early and growth stage companies. I think in Europe, the biggest change that I can see is that we are now actually the good ones. For the good companies, we are competing with everyone. So we're competing even with Silicon Valley. And this is not necessarily true in Turkey yet, but if you go in our countries of operation, if we do Poland, and if you go to Estonia, for example, it's amazing how many Silicon Valley operations are there. So, I mean, it's now a global game, which is quite exciting. It is good for our portfolio companies as well, because if we really can create the great ones, the good companies, then I think there's really a chance that we can just give them to the Sequoias of the world right after. So
You make my heart cry. Give them to the Sequoias of the world. There's a lot of growth funds in Europe as well.
I like European funds. No.
But I think one of the things that you've touched upon, which I'd like us to discuss as well, is it's more competitive now. And in my opinion, investments and capital is a commodity.
Sure.
But first, let's start at the end of the value chain, because with Lanscape here we have the Bursa Istanbul, which is every entrepreneur's dream when you IPO, but you guys are coming in a little earlier as well with the private market. Please tell us.
Thank you very much. My name is Recep, the Director of Private Market of Bursa Istanbul. It's a new marketplace for entrepreneurs and early stage companies to raise capital and also find liquidity without going public. And so, yes, as you already stated, maybe the ultimate dream or the end of the road, maybe another step in their business cycle.
Yeah, let's not call it the end of the road.
Yeah, not the end of the road. First, just to start a new page, then going public. But as you know, since the scandals, maybe 2001 or even started by Arthur Andersen, the collapse of Arthur Andersen, there's an increasing burden and the compliance and the regulatory burden on the companies, on the public companies, which unfortunately what we observe preventing SMEs and the relatively small-scale companies to go public, as we also observe from the number of public companies more or less decreasing, or at least not increasing at their pace in the past. So that's why we created this new marketplace to allow young entrepreneurs, innovative companies, early stage companies, as well as SMEs, to raise capital and find partners without going public, without being subject to the numerous obligations of the capital market regulations. And it's a kind of preparatory stage for these type of companies to get. We also help them to get prepared for the IPOs to be listed in the exchange in the long run. And just going back to your point, competition and European Union, I'm also representing Turkey at the Horizon, the European Union Commission Horizon 2020 program that promotes or supports innovation and R&D. And more or less all countries in EU also discussing the same issues what we are discussing here, of course, at maybe at a different scale. But the aim is, of course, to be more competitive, and especially when increase the competitiveness of EU comparing to US in innovation.
Which is a big topic, and I'm glad you brought it up. In terms of the unicorn discussion, and every one of us that's in this sector, we read about it daily, and our Facebook feeds is constantly filled with a discussion about unicorns, this and this and that. So I think there's no need to dwell on exactly that topic, but I think it's worth highlighting. We're seeing more unicorns or potential unicorns, companies valued to $1 billion or more, coming outside of the US. And one of my theories, which I'd like to test on you guys, is innovation is borderless. So we're going to increasingly see cool stuff coming out of Sweden, Eastern Europe, Turkey, Middle East. What does the EBRD feel about that? Or actually, let me rephrase that. What are you doing to help that progress in the right direction?
Well, I mean, we provide capital first of all, which is scarce in these geographies for the stage that we look for, which is early and growth stage. I'm actually, I think, it sounds great that innovation is borderless, but in reality, what you end up seeing is innovation sort of tends to gravitate towards certain countries right now, and unfortunately none of them are in our country of operations list, so which is a shame.
Why do you feel that?
Well, it's because I think for innovation to happen, the market needs to be formed that will feed that, that will commercialize, that will allow that innovation to be commercialized. And those markets tend to be formed first and foremost in the U.S. and some really like United Kingdom and those countries that have these ecosystems. So the innovation usually follows a need, and the need has to happen first, and those needs usually happen in certain countries. Granted, you have some outliers. Like I would say, Skype is an outlier, and Baze is an outlier. These sort of coming out of Israel is not really, Israel is a different story. I'm not, but again, it happens. But I don't think there's a systematic way where you can say, I'm going to set up a fund and invest in this geography, and I want them to be innovative. I want them to go unicorns. I think that fund strategy. To me, I personally, I don't think I could make it work, and if anybody could, that'd be great. But
well, I'm having a talk tomorrow on this topic and looking at the statistics of it, and the 7 unicorns coming out of Sweden and the 47 that's coming out of Europe. And I came from Dubai this morning, looking at the 4 or 5 potential Middle Eastern ones in the horizon. Karim, who's the competitor of Uber, just got $60 million from Belfrage Capital and is on his way to Souk, and Souk.com is the same. So let's agree to disagree on that one and see what the other guys think on innovation being borderless.
I would start by saying that obviously creativity is borderless, as everywhere. But from creativity to innovation, I tend to agree with Yavuz that it usually is getting polarized and gravitates around a certain ecosystem that you cannot find everywhere in the world due to fragmented markets.
So what's your favorite hub ecosystem for startups at the moment, where you go look?
Sorry?
What's your favorite ecosystem hub at the moment where you go look for opportunities?
Well, basically, I'm very interested to invest in Central and East Europe. So whatever hubs I'm looking at are in that region. What we try to do actually as 3TS is we try to get companies in relatively early stage in this region, and then maybe help them ramp up the business and teleport them towards the likes of Silicon Valley or London or wherever the markets are, wherever the ecosystem for innovation is better for that type of business. And it might be in different places. In some cases, it might be actually East Coast, like we have one of the investee companies is started in Bratislava, and now it's in New York, because it's the best thing for them to be in New York. We invested in Hungarian companies years ago. Hungarian company years ago, LogMeIn. They went on the Nasdaq. So talking about unicorns, it's a number of them. Some of them showed up some time ago. Then again, and I also agree with Yavuz that there is no structured approach on getting to the unicorn phase coming from the region. So whatever happened is more not hazard, but more of a chance, rather than a structured approach. And in terms of the unicorns coming from other regions, we also have to understand that there are so many more unicorns now than at any time in human history.
Yes.
So the problem that we have to address isn't this a bit worrying that maybe the valuations, maybe the ways to actually assess a business, value a business are a bit
wow,
inflated.
you're talking
at
about
moment.
the elephant in the room.
No,
You've just approached it.
we're a small player in global scale, and we're a bit kind of worried about the kind of valuations that, because it's a global play, and Silicon Valley Fund comes in, and we are sticking with a conservative valuation, and then it's difficult to make a deal. And our only advantage, and in some cases it actually plays for us, is that we are local or regional, and we can help them. We have offices throughout the region, so we can be with a company more than maybe somebody who's playing global but does not have a local or regional representation. So at least for early stage, of course, EBRD, when you invest at a higher level, then it's really a global play. But for really early stage companies, I think VC investments still tend to be, if not local, at least regional. So it's not so much of a global play yet. It will come.
We only have a few minutes left, and we've now spoken about from an investor's point of view, and I know we've got a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience. Final few comments would be, you as investors, what are the top 3 things that you look for in a team or business when you invest? And think about it from an audience point of view as tips.
Well, I mean, we look for people who've actually had prior experience in a sort of a real company. Before a startup, you've hired people, fired people, you've done that. And I think that's very important, because entrepreneurship is not just this glamorous, innovation and all that.
There's nothing glamorous about it. It's really hard work.
Well, it's also, it's payroll, it's taxes, it's HR, it's all that stuff, which is not obvious. So we look for that. We look for, in our stage, we have to look for traction. That is just down to the unit economics of a company to see how it works. And at the end of the day, we look at whether these guys understand the market they're operating in, which is surprisingly sometimes there's a great product, but it doesn't really solve a problem that's keeping up anybody at night. So
to summarize, show them that you know what you're doing, that you've done it before, and you thought of all the boring stuff as well as the glamour of your idea.
In my case, I think what I'm looking for is to see a team that has complementary abilities and skills in terms of the team members. So I would probably never invest in a one-man show. I need to see a team, so that's very important. And secondly, focus. The team and or the entrepreneurs need to be very focused on what they're trying to do.
Okay, I love that, but I hear that quite a lot. How do you test it? How do you know how focused they are?
Actually, the focus is sort of an implicit test, because if they are not focused, they will start, day 2, they will start telling you about other ideas and other opportunities they've seen, other than the core opportunity they are following. So then they are playing with other ideas, and then you can test them if they are really focused on what they have to do, or if they
Guys,
want
be
to play.
focused and show that you've got it. You're one.
Then again, in some cases, you started with something, and something else will work. So in some cases, it's not necessarily a wise decision to stay focused at all costs.
No, I see what you mean, but you're at least focused on the problem at hand, and you can pivot with that.
Rather than stick everything at the wall throw everything at the wall to see what sticks.
Before we hear the final words from Bursa Istanbul on this one, I just wanted to say I saw an article the other day at TechCrunch that was saying a very high number, I think it was 80–90%, so don't quote me exactly on it, of the startups after getting Series A failed. Something happened, the mechanism, when they got money in the bank. Weekends, started going home at 6, having dinner with boyfriends and girlfriends, getting in office, and mentally there lost what you call focus a little. So I think starvation is the mother of innovation.
I mean, in addition, what our other panelists already stated, I believe the power of collaboration and synergy brought by this cooperation and collaboration. I think the policymaker, as you know, Borsa Islam is the intermediary between buyers and sellers and brokers and service providers, also through the private market for the privately held companies. So exchanges, regulated entities or NGOs, plus policymakers should or facilitate the collaboration amongst the stakeholders of this ecosystem. And additionally, just going back to one point by Yavuz, commercialization for the innovation, maybe more organized platforms for the valuation of intellectual property rights.
For the valuation of intellectual property rights. Interesting. It's a tough one because it's a constantly moving market, and by nature we want to be disruptive, and we're in a hurry there. So as an entrepreneur, but I see that as a value. Interesting. I was wondering if we have any questions from the audience. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you so much. A very informing session. For the gentleman over there, how much of your time is spent in the Middle East, the ME in EMEA? And you mentioned innovation. Sometimes it's really not innovation because Kareem, and many others are really not breakthroughs. They're a business model that was proved to be successful somewhere else and imported to another market. How much of this do you look at as not necessarily the innovation as much as a proven business cycle or business model that can be implemented?
Just before you answer, are you entrepreneur or VC or both?
We're entrepreneurs. We're based in Jordan and Dubai, and we want to hear more from you about the importance of the Middle East.
Please.
So when you say Middle East, we cover, Jordan, Tunisia, Egypt, and Morocco, and by Turkey as well. Although so I'm based out of Turkey, so I'm here all the time, and Jordan is probably our #1 focus in the region because of the entrepreneurial drive there, and we are actually limited partners in a number of funds in Jordan. One of them is the Badi Impact Fund with those guys. So we do spend quite a bit of time. I don't want to give a percentage because I wouldn't know. In terms of the models like Kareem or Souk, I wouldn't call them innovation. So you're not going to take that to Silicon Valley. I don't think so. But again, those are great businesses, and they've done really well. So it's not a way to say that
Let's give an example. Cash Basha, which is innovative around how to buy Amazon products in Jordan. So in itself, it's nothing, but they've found a part of the market that's broken and created an innovative workaround in that.
How do you see services as the future?
He said it better than me.
Obviously, this is so. Again, going back to Jordan, I think there's a huge potential that Jordan will be the technology hub of the entire Middle East and serving those big markets, those sort of the wealthier markets like Saudi Arabia and UAE. So, I don't know that example you're talking about, but there's obviously potential there. So I'm to the term innovation, maybe I was more referring to the unicorns, the 1 billion, but you don't need a billion, right? I mean, okay, yeah.
Yes.
So 2 or 3 questions. What percentage of the unicorn is going to die in the next 3 years? For inability of raise any further money, having created financial structure that is so complex that they are now incapable of raising another dime.
I think it's a really interesting question, and I think it comes down to what you were alluding to, which is also the valuations here. So it's a hot market right now, and I think we're making a mistake by saying unicorns and then analyzing all in one go, because completely different businesses and sectors, and some of them have been really skilled at finding a business model and monetizing that, and then you see others that are amazing, and I'm really impressed by them, but still in the red. So I think business needs to hit the bottom line, and I think that's usually an indicator to answer your question.
Evernote, Dropbox, ... So what's your view on what percentage of deaths in the next 3 years? And then I have another question, percentage of closing in the corporate VC.
Percentage of what's that mean?
How many corporate VC are going to close shop in the next 3 years in the same way that 80% of the corporate VC closed shop in the last down run between 2000 and 2005?
Oh, I have so many opinions on this. I'll leave it to you guys to start. What do you think of the percentage of unicorns that are dying? It's a tough question with a camera on. Yeah, that's even worse. I'm not even gonna.
It's hard to respond in this very competitive and increasingly competitive environment. As you might know, the fast, rapidly change in the Fortune 500 companies, even the public company segment. So every 6 years, 1/3 of the Fortune 500 companies is replaced by.
Interesting. I didn't know that stat.
New companies. I mean, if you compare the list with the list 50 years ago, 40 years ago, only 11% of the companies remain in the list. So, very fast, rapid change.
I definitely think we're in the double digits in terms of.
20%.
I said in the double digits. I'd say yes, definitely. I think on the VC side, which is really interesting, and I see a lot of it. So the corporates moving into the VC space. So. Again, which is the backlash of the conversation we're having, it's hot right now. Everyone wants to be a tech geek entrepreneur, and everyone wants to be a VC and sit on this panel right now and discuss this. And I see it a lot in terms of corporates coming into the space. With capital to spend, there's budgets that have been allocated internally to innovate. And you've got, no offense to anyone with a tie and suit, but you've got gentlemen with a tie and suit going, what's that mean? How am I going to innovate? Knowing that you have corporate structures that are difficult to create that in, and therefore the trend right now is to do an accelerator or an incubator or create a VC arm. I think from their point of view that makes a lot of sense. I think from an entrepreneurial point of view that might make a lot of sense. Our area that we were just discussing, the Middle East, is where I'm the most cautious about it, because in Turkey and in Europe, it's cool to be an entrepreneur. Moms and dads are proud and sit and discuss it around the dinner table. My daughter's an entrepreneur. And that's not always true in Amman, and it's not true in Cairo. So when a big corporate comes and says, I'd like to buy your company, after 18 months of starvation, they will hear their mamas going, take it, take it, take it. So they will sell too early, too cheaply to a corporate because of a lot of other structures in that. And that's what I'm worried about, especially in MENA.
I wouldn't risk a percentage, but certainly there's going to be a fair amount of unicorns to die in the next few years, simply because some of them are just growing too fast to get a sustainable growth, and also because when you get past the 1 billion, it's getting more and more complicated to get the next funding rounds because there are just a few guys up there who can either buy you or continue to invest in you. So there's going to be a lot of people closing businesses or
Or
such an-
valuations going down. It doesn't mean that the businesses themselves are incorrect. They're just potentially overvalued.
Or that.
And before an IPO, that will be corrected.
And in terms of corporate ventures, what I see now is that they tend to go to diversified from really early incubation, as you said, to large rounds. So it's kind of, doing a lot of things at the same time. The only kind of successes I've seen are more in the really early stage incubation stage. But then again, to be a big corporate, it's very easy to simulate a success with a small fish that you're feeding.
We're skeptical. Yes, sir?
Do you think we need to evaluate the characteristics of people in a team for entrepreneurship or no?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
If we need to assess the entrepreneurial qualities in a team,
I go,
or just the
hell
professional
yeah.
qualities.
Each person.
Each person. Okay.
Of course.
Of course.
Yes. Not everybody is an entrepreneur, and I'm not an entrepreneur, so I know that about myself. So, but I'm 40 years old, and when you're 20, you probably don't know that. So,
I would give a slightly different answer. Agree to disagree. You need in a team. You certainly need at least one or two guys or girls with entrepreneurial drive and fitted to be entrepreneurs. But there could be a few other people in the team that are not necessarily entrepreneurial driven, that are more professionals, and they could be good complements to the team. And obviously, as they start together, they'll get shares, a percentage of the company shares to start with, and then they will stay with the company for a while or for the long run. I think that's quite fine. I don't need to see entrepreneurial drive in each and every individual member of an entrepreneurial team.
I want to see hunger in each one of them, because it's so difficult. You cry every day. You hit so many barriers. Everyone calls you damn crazy. And in order to, as a team, to power through that and be creative and work all through the night, etc., it's not a 9 to 5. The glamour side, you pretend here, but it's really not. So I assess hunger, and it doesn't have to be entrepreneurs. Like, I want to make.
I have a quick example. We invested recently in a great smartwatch product, and it was developed by this Romanian tech guru, let's say, but he does not have the entrepreneurial drive. He's a professor at the university, PhD, and so on and so forth, and he was the CEO of the company initially. So something was not right. So he gathered a team with some other people that were more entrepreneurially driven, and then he took the CTO role. A new CEO was assigned to the team, and things started to boom. So it can happen.
Some people suggest that you can use MBTI tools or these tools for evaluation of people. Do you agree or no?
I'm stomach-led.
I'm not using any kind of sophisticated tool for that. I think knowing the people, it's just one-on-one, and the.
Are you hungry?
The people. Not gut feeling. You need to know them. You need to know about them. You need to know their family ties, and you need to know what they do after work. It's a complicated process to understand, especially again the level where we are investing, which is early stage. Maybe later stage is different. You don't need to know too much about those people. You just put the money.
Do we have time for one more question?
One last question.
One last question. We had a blue there. Yes, sir.
Actually, two questions. What's the best way?
I love that. He disrupted immediately.
Perfect.
He's got one more question. I'll
Perfect.
go 2 questions.
Bend the
Make him
rules.
into one. Pretend that it's one.
What's the best way
Or combine them.
to reach you and the worst way to reach you?
This is an excellent question. I really like this because it's important, because it's difficult sometimes to access capital. And I hear it a lot from entrepreneurs that I meet. How do I email, call, etc.? The EBRD.
And if I might add something, VC are well known to be really good at following up, answering, saying no
Are you
rapidly,
being-
and being process driven.
Touche.
Touché.
well, I think all VCs are very different, and if you write to the right VC, based on stage and sector focus and country geography, all that. There are a bunch of parameters. If you write to the right VC, they have to answer because you're basically their client. I mean, that's how we earn a living, right? So the only way, you know, a VC wouldn't answer you at all, or just sort of you get an answer 2 weeks later, is that you're written to the wrong guy. So do your research, like we do our research on companies. Do your research. See what we do.
This is really true, and most people will have their profile online, and you will see people mass emailing, and you will know, if you go to my profile, you'll see exactly what companies I'm interested in, what sectors.
But I guess the question was the best way or the worst way. So for me, obviously you can just write an email or try cold call, and that should work for the you know, professional investors, for the good investors. But I think the best way is to maybe have someone in their contact network to sort of refer or introduce you. That would be the best way, because it's a different thing when he hears it not from you as a cold call, but from somebody in his network that he knows. And you can do that more and more easily with, you know, stuff like LinkedIn and you know, social graph. You can go and you can get
and the power of vanity. If someone emails me and goes, "Ooh, I saw you on stage, you were lovely," I'm lovely, brilliant, and then you have suddenly you have something. But I think many times
you were lovely.
Thank you, thank you. I'm very pleased, especially now that we have a full-on
so
panel.
That's a prompt for the
definitely
participants to send you emails.
But I think many people don't, and you become very cold. Dear Mrs. Belfrage, I would like to blah, blah, blah. And it's a really boring, stale email that's been thought through instead of being personal. I saw you on stage. I know that you like this and that. And you can, if you have a chatty conversation, that means I will interact with you. But if it's a long, formal one, I'll wait, and then I might not forget it. But you're right in terms of being a professional business. You should get a reply.
The best way is please go to a website of Borsa Istanbul Private Market. Which is
See?
open to
Genius. Every opportunity to sell.
International entrepreneurs, startups, as well as investors. We are a click away from you. And of course, we provide a filtered, pre-screened portfolio of companies to our qualified investors, VCs, private equities, and certified angel investors. We are gathering all these stakeholders of the ecosystem, both local and international.
Fantastic. I will then make, when you're standing up, that means that we're wrapping up. Come see me on stage tomorrow at 11 downstairs, and I will discuss more about the unicorns of Europe. I thought this was really interesting. I think we highlighted the differences between VC and entrepreneur. We talked about the elephant in the room and got some tips on how to and what to and what we're thinking. So I learned a lot. Hope you did too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.